I spent 3 years secretly saving $7,700 for my dad's dream trip to Japan, coordinating every detail of flights and accommodations across Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka. Then, just 3 days before departure, a text from my mom. "We gave your spot to Kevin's girlfriend, Heather. She knows more about Japan and she's more fun." I replied with 2 simple words: "Got it." They had no idea that within hours I would cancel everything, from premium flights to luxury hotels. When they finally returned home, broke and stranded, they found new locks on the doors. Rent tripled, and their credit cards declined for a simple coffee. And that was just the beginning of what they'd unleashed. Growing up, my dad was my hero. When other fathers were absent or disinterested, mine taught me to fish, cheered at every baseball game, and stayed up late helping with science projects. Every weekend was our adventure, even when money was tight. He worked at the same manufacturing plant for 20 years, always talking about how someday he'd see the world. Japan topped his bucket list, fascinated by its blend of ancient traditions and cutting-edge technology. "Someday, I'll walk under those cherry blossoms, Griffin," he'd say, pointing to travel shows on our small TV. "Before I'm too old to enjoy it." When I graduated college and landed my job as a financial advisor, I made a private promise to make that dream come true. My father had sacrificed so much for our family, putting 3 kids through school while deferring his own dreams. Mom supported him but was more practical, reminding him they needed to focus on mortgage payments and my younger siblings' education. Kevin, my younger brother by 4 years, was still bouncing between community college programs, while Amanda, the youngest at 20, had just started her nursing program. I began setting aside money each month specifically for this trip, calculating that by Dad's 57th birthday, I could give him the surprise of a lifetime. I lived frugally in a modest apartment, drove an older car, and limited my social spending. My colleagues raised eyebrows at my packed lunches and declined happy hours, but the growing travel fund gave me more satisfaction than any temporary indulgence. 3 years passed. With each promotion, I increased my contributions to the Japan Fund. I researched extensively, joining travel forums and following Japanese culture blogs. I wanted this trip to be perfect, an experience that would honor everything my father had done for us. 6 months before his birthday, I began making concrete plans. I booked business-class flights to reduce the strain of the long journey on my parents. I reserved rooms at carefully selected hotels that balanced luxury with authentic Japanese experience. For Tokyo, a boutique hotel near the Imperial Palace. In Kyoto, a traditional ryokan with private hot spring baths. In Osaka, accommodations near the best food districts to satisfy Dad's adventurous palate. I arranged for a tea ceremony, tickets to a sumo match, and a private guide for the Fushimi Inari Shrine. Every detail was considered, right down to portable Wi-Fi and pre-purchased subway passes. The itinerary left room for spontaneity, but ensured they wouldn't miss any must-see attractions. When everything was confirmed, I called my mother to bring her into the plan. She cried when I explained what I'd arranged. "Your father will be overwhelmed, Griffin," she said. "This is beyond generous." We agreed to include Kevin and Amanda. Though I would cover most expenses, they would contribute what they could toward their portions. Amanda was ecstatic, immediately requesting time off from her clinical rotations. Kevin's response was more measured, but he agreed to join. As the departure date approached, I found myself checking the itinerary daily, imagining their reactions to each experience. I created a shared document with helpful phrases, customs to observe, and restaurant recommendations. The total came to $7,700, more than I'd initially budgeted, but seeing my family experience this together would be worth every penny. 2 months before the trip, Kevin began dating Heather. She worked as a social media influencer, posting lifestyle content and travel videos. She had visited Japan the previous year, something Kevin mentioned repeatedly at family dinners. "Heather says the best ramen is actually in this little place in Harajuku," he'd interject while I discussed our Osaka food tour. "Heather thinks you've scheduled too many temple visits," he commented as I reviewed the Kyoto portion of the trip. I noticed a shift in my parents' interest level. They began asking more about what Heather had recommended rather than expressing excitement about the experiences I'd planned. Still, I dismissed the subtle change, focused on the approaching departure date and finalizing details. During our final family dinner before the trip, I presented everyone with personalized itineraries bound in leather folios. Each contained their flight information, hotel details, and daily activities. I'd included personal notes about why I thought they'd enjoy each experience. As my father thumbed through his eyes glistening, Kevin cleared his throat. "So, I was thinking," he said, setting his folio aside. "Heather really knows Japan. She speaks some Japanese and has connections there. Would it be okay if she joined us? She'd pay her own way." The table fell silent. I felt my stomach tighten. "The reservations are already made," I explained. "The hotels are booked for exactly 5 people. Adding another person would mean changing everything." "But wouldn't it be helpful to have someone who knows their way around?" my mother suggested. "She could enhance the experience." "I've spent 3 years researching this trip," I replied, trying to keep my voice level. "We have local guides arranged for the complex parts." "No offense," Kevin said, "but there's a difference between research and actually having been there." The conversation moved on, but a tension had been introduced that lingered throughout the evening. As everyone left, my father hugged me tightly. "This is the most thoughtful gift I've ever received," he said. "I can't wait to experience it with you." His words reassured me. Whatever Kevin's agenda was with Heather, this trip was about giving my dad a long-deferred dream. Nothing would interfere with that. 2 weeks before departure, Kevin called to apologize for pushing the Heather issue. "I got carried away," he admitted. "This trip is about Dad, not about my new relationship." "We're good, right?" "We're good," I confirmed, relieved that the matter was settled. Little did I know that the worst betrayal was yet to come. The final countdown to our departure had begun. I had taken 2 weeks off work, my longest vacation since starting my career. My apartment was clean, mail delivery suspended, and plants entrusted to my neighbor. My suitcase stood ready by the door, packed with carefully selected clothes appropriate for April in Japan. 3 days before our flight, I was reviewing last-minute currency exchange options when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Griffin, we've made a change to the travel arrangements. We gave your spot to Heather since she knows so much about Japan, and frankly, she's more fun to be around. Kevin says she can translate and get us into exclusive places. We know you'll understand since you planned this for your father's happiness. You can still cover the expenses as your gift, right? Love you." I read the message 3 times, certain I had misunderstood. My hands began to shake. I immediately called my mother, but the call went to voicemail. I tried my father, then Kevin, then Amanda. No one answered. For several minutes, I sat motionless, staring at the message. The casualness of it was what cut deepest. Not even a phone call for something this significant. Just a text, as if informing me about a minor change in dinner plans. I wrote and deleted several responses before settling on. "Got it." 2 words that masked the hurricane of emotions churning inside me. Disbelief, humiliation, betrayal. I had sacrificed for years to create this experience, not just financially but emotionally, pouring my heart into every detail. And with one text, I was discarded, deemed less valuable than someone who had been in our lives for mere months. I checked social media, wondering if there would be any acknowledgement of this change in plans. What I found was worse. Photos of my family with Heather at a pre-Japan dinner from 2 nights ago. Comments about how excited they were to experience Japan as a family. My mother had written, "So blessed to have a Japanese expert joining us," with a string of heart emojis. They had been planning this for days, perhaps longer, while deliberately keeping me in the dark. I scrolled through more posts and discovered Heather had been boasting about the trip for over a week. "So excited for this all-expenses-paid luxury trip to Japan," read one post, accompanied by a photo of her passport. The comments section included one from my brother. "Only the best for you, babe. Griffin's got us covered." My exclusion had been decided long before that text was sent, and everyone had known except me. I spent the next several hours in a daze, pacing my apartment. I called Amanda again, and finally, she picked up. "I just saw Mom's text," she said, her voice hushed. "Griffin, I had no idea they were going to cut you out. I thought Heather was just going to meet us there for some activities. Did you know they were planning this? I asked, needing to understand who had betrayed me. Her hesitation told me everything. They started talking about it after that family dinner. Kevin convinced Mom that Heather could make the trip more special for Dad. I should have warned you, but I didn't think they'd actually go through with it. Does Dad know? This was the question that terrified me most. Another pause. He's the one who made the final decision, Griffin. He said since you planned it but have already seen the photos and videos, it might be more exciting for him to have someone new experiencing it too. The floor seemed to drop beneath me. My father, the reason for all this effort, had chosen to exclude me from the culmination of my 3-year project. The person I'd done this all for had decided I wasn't necessary for the experience. I thanked Amanda for her honesty and ended the call. Then I began digging deeper, examining our family's financial entanglements that had previously seemed like normal family support. I discovered my parents had been hiding significant financial problems. The mortgage I thought was nearly paid off had been refinanced twice in recent years. My father's frequent references to investments had been a cover for mounting credit card debt. And most disturbing of all, Kevin had been borrowing large sums from my parents, who in turn had been relying on my regular gifts to stay afloat. They had been using me as their financial safety net, while deliberately excluding me from family experiences. The most painful revelation came when I accessed the shared cloud folder where I'd stored all the trip documents. The folder activity showed that Kevin had downloaded everything 2 weeks ago, right after our family dinner. There were comments added to several documents. Griffin always overthinks everything. We can skip this temple visit. This restaurant looks boring. Heather knows better places. At least we don't have to listen to Griffin's history lectures now, lol. Comments from both Kevin and my parents, mocking the itinerary I'd spent years crafting, dismissing my efforts as boring and pedantic, laughing about their relief at not having me along. What hurt most was a comment from my father on the Kyoto Ryokan reservation. This will be more fun without Griffin analyzing everything to death. Heather will make it an adventure instead of a museum tour. The final piece fell into place when I checked my bank accounts and discovered an unauthorized withdrawal. $5,000 had been transferred from my emergency fund to Kevin's account 3 days earlier. My father, who had been a co-signer on the account since my college days, had apparently decided that my funds were family property. The depth of the betrayal was now fully clear. This wasn't a thoughtless decision made in excitement over Heather's Japan knowledge. This was a calculated move by my family to extract maximum financial benefit from me while minimizing their obligation to include me in their experiences. They wanted my money, not my presence. As this realization solidified, something shifted inside me. The hurt began to crystallize into resolve. If they saw me as nothing more than a financial resource, then perhaps it was time they learned what life would be like without that resource. I opened my laptop and navigated to the airline website. All 5 tickets were in my name, purchased with my credit card. The hotels, the experiences, the rail passes, everything had been arranged and paid for by me, which meant I controlled it all. My phone buzzed with another text from my mother. Could you send the hotel reservation confirmations to Heather directly? She wants to contact them about room preferences. I didn't respond. Instead, I began making phone calls. The shock of betrayal left me sleepless that night. I alternated between periods of numbness and waves of anger so intense my hands shook. By morning, I had moved beyond the initial paralysis into a state of cold clarity. I needed more information before deciding how to respond. I began methodically documenting everything. I took screenshots of the text messages, the social media posts, the shared folder comments. I downloaded bank statements showing the unauthorized transfer. I gathered evidence of every financial contribution I had made to my family over the years. The picture that emerged was disturbing. What I had viewed as occasional support from my family revealed itself as a pattern of exploitation. My brother Kevin had never held a job longer than 6 months, yet somehow maintained an apartment in a trendy neighborhood and drove a car beyond his means. My parents' home, which I had assumed was nearly paid off after 20 years, was heavily mortgaged with my father having taken equity loans to cover investments that never materialized. Most revealing was a series of email exchanges I found between my parents and Kevin, discussing how to approach me for additional loans. They had categorized my financial support not as generous assistance, but as an expectation, even an obligation. Griffin's doing so well, he'll never miss another 5,000. My father had written 3 months earlier. We just need to frame it right. My mother's response: he's always been responsible with money. Sometimes I think he enjoys feeling superior to the rest of us about it. Kevin's contribution was the most hurtful. Griffin's so desperate to be the family hero. He'll never say no if we tell him it's for something important. He's an easy mark. My entire identity within my family had been reduced to easy mark. I spent the entire day investigating further, reaching out to my sister Amanda for clarity on certain points. She was reluctant at first, but eventually confirmed what the evidence was telling me. "They've been using you, Griffin," she admitted. "I've tried to tell them it's wrong, but they just say you can afford it, and family helps family." "And what about excluding me from this trip that I planned and paid for?" I asked. "That was mainly Kevin's doing," she explained. "He's been jealous of your relationship with Dad forever. When Heather came along, he saw an opportunity to one-up you. He convinced Dad that Heather could give him a more authentic experience than you could. And Dad went along with it? Just like that?" Her silence was answer enough. I discovered through social media that my family was already in pre-trip celebration mode. Photos showed them at a high-end sushi restaurant the night before, practicing for Japan according to the caption. Another post from Kevin featured my father receiving a guidebook from Heather with the comment, "Expert advice from someone who actually knows what she's talking about." Every new discovery reinforced the painful truth. They had not only excluded me, but were actively celebrating that exclusion. The final revelation came when I checked the travel documents I had shared. The flight information had been downloaded and forwarded to Heather's email. She had then reached out directly to the hotels, using my name, to request room upgrades and special amenities, positioning herself as the true architect of this trip. What truly broke me was finding text messages on our family group chat that I had been deliberately excluded from. In it, my father expressed relief about the change in plans. "Griffin's a good son, but this trip will be so much more fun with Heather. She understands adventure, not just checking boxes on an itinerary." My mother: "He's so serious all the time. This way we can really enjoy ourselves." Kevin: "Plus he's still covering everything, so it's a win-win." They had been discussing me this way all along, seeing my generosity as something to exploit while mocking the very qualities that had enabled me to provide for them. As evening approached, I received another text from my mother. "Need your help. Heather wants to add a day trip to Hakone, but the train tickets are confusing. Can you figure it out and book it? Also, can you increase the daily expense allowance? She says food costs more than you budgeted." No acknowledgement of having replaced me. No recognition of how painful this situation might be. Just more demands for my time, expertise, and money. That was the moment something fundamentally shifted inside me. The hurt transformed into cold resolve. I had spent years being the responsible one, the provider, the planner. I had sacrificed my own wants to fulfill theirs, and they had responded with contempt. I called my friend Jack, who worked as a lawyer specializing in real estate and financial matters. "I need some legal advice," I told him, "and I need absolute discretion." "Of course," he assured me. "What's going on?" I explained the situation in detail, including the unauthorized bank transfer and the trip situation. "First," he said, "call your bank immediately about that transfer. That's straightforward theft, family or not. And the trip? All the reservations are in my name, paid for with my cards. Legally, you're within your rights to cancel everything. They have no claim to gifts not yet received, especially with the circumstances you've described." "What about their living situation?" I asked, coming to the most complex part of my plan. This was something I had never shared with my family. 2 years ago, when the owner of my parents' rental house had decided to sell, I had quietly purchased the property through an LLC to prevent them from having to move. I had kept the rent artificially low, absorbing the difference myself. Neither my parents nor Kevin, who lived in the converted garage apartment, knew I was their landlord. "As the property owner, you have every right to adjust rent to market rate with proper notice," Jack confirmed. "Just make sure you follow state landlord-tenant laws precisely." By the end of our conversation, I had a clear understanding of what actions I could legally take. Jack helped me draft the necessary notices and documents, emphasizing the importance of documenting everything. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked as we wrapped up. "It will permanently change your family dynamics." "They've already changed it," I replied. "I'm just making it official." That night, I monitored the family's social media as they posted excited updates about their impending departure. Photos of packed suitcases, Heather showing off her custom Japan travel outfits, my father posing with a new camera I had not known about, presumably another purchase enabled by my financial support. They were scheduled to depart in 36 hours. I had that long to implement my response. I sent a brief text to my sister Amanda. "I know you were caught in the middle of this. What happens next isn't directed at you." Then I turned off my phone, opened my laptop, and began executing the plan that would forever change my family's understanding of the son they had taken for granted. Morning brought clarity and purpose. I had moved beyond the paralyzing hurt into a state of focused determination. This would not be an emotional retaliation, but a calculated response designed to correct years of imbalance. I began with the financial aspects. I called my bank to report the unauthorized transfer from my account. The representative was sympathetic, especially when I explained it was a family member with outdated access. They froze the account to prevent further withdrawals and began the fraud investigation process. The $5,000 would be returned, and my father's access permanently revoked. Next, I systematically addressed each credit card and financial account where I had supported my family. I had been paying portions of their utilities, covering the family cell phone plan, and maintaining several joint credit cards that were primarily used by my parents and Kevin. I canceled every card, closed every joint account, and removed myself from every shared financial responsibility. For services that were essential, I paid the final bill with a note to the provider explaining the account holder would be changing. The property matter required more delicacy. I contacted the property management company that nominally handled the house. "I need to implement some changes," I explained to the manager, with whom I had a good relationship. "The rent has been well below market for years, and it's time to adjust." "We've been telling you that for a while," she replied. "The current rate is almost 40% below comparable properties in the area." I know. I wanted to help them out. But circumstances have changed. We agreed on a new rental rate that aligned with market values, effectively tripling what my family had been paying. I also instructed her to serve proper notice of the change, effective immediately upon their return from the trip. "And I'd like the locks changed while they're away," I added. "I'll provide temporary key cards that will work until they sign the new rental agreement." "That's unusual," she noted. "But since you're the owner and they'll be out of the country, we can manage it." I spent the afternoon meticulously documenting every financial contribution I had made to my family over the past 5 years. The total was staggering, well into 6 figures when including the property tax and maintenance costs for the house. I had essentially been bankrolling their lifestyle while they treated me with dismissive contempt. As evening approached, I turned my attention to the Japan trip itself. I had arranged everything through a premium travel service that specialized in Asian destinations. I called my contact there. "I need to make some significant changes to the reservations under Fuller," I explained. "Of course, Mr. Fuller. What can we help with? Adding services? Actually, I need to cancel everything." A pause. "The entire itinerary? May I ask why? If there's a problem with any of our arrangements, we'd be happy to adjust rather than cancel." "It's a personal matter," I replied. "The trip is no longer happening as planned." She explained the cancellation policies. Most elements were fully refundable at this point, with only nominal fees for the last-minute changes. The airlines would provide credits for future travel rather than cash refunds, but that was acceptable. "I'll process everything right away," she assured me. "You'll receive confirmation emails for each cancellation." "Thank you. And could you delay sending those confirmations until tomorrow morning, Japan time? I want to make sure all the arrangements are handled properly before notifying the travelers." This wasn't strictly true, but it would ensure that my family wouldn't discover the cancellations until they were already in transit or arriving in Japan. With the travel arrangements being dismantled, I focused on the communication strategy. I drafted clear, factual messages explaining the changes I had implemented, without emotional language or accusations. These would be sent at strategic times during their trip, ensuring they understood the consequences of their actions without providing opportunity for immediate manipulation in response. I created a detailed spreadsheet of all financial support I had provided, with documentation for each item. This would counter the inevitable claims that I was overreacting or being cruel. Finally, I prepared the house for their return. I arranged for the locks to be changed the day after their departure. The property manager would leave temporary key cards in a lockbox, accessible with a code I would provide only after they had acknowledged receipt of the new rental terms. I contacted local services they relied on, from their regular coffee shop to the dry cleaner, explaining that I would no longer be guaranteeing their accounts. I wasn't being vindictive, merely removing my financial backing from people who had demonstrated they didn't value my contribution. As I completed these arrangements, my phone buzzed continuously with messages from my family. Could you check if the hotel can arrange an earlier check-in? Heather wants time to freshen up before our first outing. We need to increase the daily spending money. Heather says your budget is way too tight for proper shopping. Can you make dinner reservations at this restaurant Heather recommends? It's outside your original plan but supposed to be amazing. Each message reinforced the rightness of my actions. Not once did anyone acknowledge what they had done or express concern about how I might be feeling. They simply continued to treat me as their personal concierge and ATM. I didn't respond to any of them. They would understand soon enough. That evening, I received a call from Amanda. I had specifically excluded her from my financial recalibration, as she had at least shown awareness that their treatment of me was wrong. They're leaving tomorrow, she said without preamble. Griffin, what are you planning to do? What makes you think I'm planning anything? Because I know you. You're methodical, not impulsive. You're hurt and angry, and rightfully so. But I'm worried about what happens next. I considered how much to share with her. Amanda had been caught in the middle, neither participating in the worst of the behavior nor standing firmly against it. They're going to experience the natural consequences of their choices, I said finally. Nothing more, nothing less. Griffin, please don't do anything drastic. Despite everything, they're still our family. Family doesn't treat each other the way they've treated me. They made their choice clear. Now they'll live with it. After we hung up, I checked the flight status one final time. Their plane would depart tomorrow afternoon. By the time they landed in Tokyo, every reservation would be canceled, every financial support system withdrawn, and the path to their comfortable home altered. I felt no joy in these actions, no vindictive pleasure, only the calm certainty that I was finally establishing the boundaries that should have existed all along. My phone buzzed with a final message from my father. Can't wait to experience this amazing trip you've planned, son. We'll send lots of pictures so you can share in the memories. The casual cruelty of his message, the complete disregard for what they had done, crystallized my resolve. This wasn't about punishment. It was about finally demanding the respect I had earned. I turned off my phone, closed my laptop, and went to bed, ready for whatever would unfold in the coming days. The morning of their departure arrived. I checked social media and found exactly what I expected: excited posts about the adventure of a lifetime beginning. Photos of my parents, Kevin and Heather, at the airport, captioned with effusive thanks to our amazing travel planner without actually naming me. Heather had posted a selfie in a first-class lounge with the caption, "The only way to travel. So blessed to have generous family." According to the flight tracker, they were now boarding. In 14 hours, they would land in Tokyo, jet-lagged and excited, expecting to be whisked to their luxury hotel in a pre-arranged private transfer. I logged into my email and found the series of cancellation confirmations from the travel service. Everything had been systematically undone. The business-class flights remained valid, of course, as they were already checking in. But upon arrival, they would discover that the hotel reservations, the private transfers, the guided tours, the restaurant bookings, the rail passes, everything had vanished. I drafted an email to be sent automatically when they would be mid-flight. I've reconsidered my participation in the Japan trip. Since my presence was deemed unnecessary, I've concluded that my financial participation is equally optional. All reservations in my name have been canceled. The funds allocated for this trip will be redirected to causes that value my contribution. Safe travels. Factual, unemotional, clear. I scheduled it to deliver when they would be approximately halfway across the Pacific, ensuring they would receive it upon landing. Next, I drove to my parents' house with the property manager. We changed the locks as planned and programmed temporary keycards that would expire in 72 hours. This would give them access to retrieve essential items while ensuring they couldn't simply ignore the new rental terms. The notice of rent adjustment has been properly posted, the manager confirmed, showing me the legal document now affixed to the door. And I've left printed copies inside on the kitchen counter as well. Thank you for handling this so professionally, I said. It's unusual, she admitted, but not unprecedented. Family situations can be complicated. After she left, I walked through the house one last time. The home I had secretly preserved for them, absorbing thousands in costs they never knew about. I removed the few personal items I had kept there, photographs and mementos from a time when I believed our family bond meant something real. In the kitchen, I left an additional document beside the rent notice. A complete accounting of every dollar I had contributed to their lives over the past 5 years. The education expenses, the mortgage assistance, the credit card payments, the car repairs, the medical bills, and finally, the property purchase and below-market rent subsidy they had never known about. The total came to just over $147,000, not including the Japan trip. Seeing it itemized this way was sobering even for me, who had lived it. For them, it would be a shocking revelation of just how dependent they had been on the son they had so casually discarded. I placed my house key on top of the papers and left, closing the door on that chapter of our relationship. Back at my apartment, I monitored the digital execution of my plan. The credit card cancellations were processing. The bank had confirmed the fraud investigation was underway. The email was scheduled for delivery during their flight. I had one final task. I drafted messages to several family friends and relatives, people who would inevitably be drawn into the situation once my family returned and discovered the changes. I wanted to reach out directly regarding the situation with my family, I wrote. You may hear a version of events from them that portrays me as having acted suddenly or cruelly. The reality is more complex. After years of financial support and personal investment, I was explicitly excluded from a family trip that I had planned and paid for. This was the culmination of a pattern of behavior that I can no longer enable. I'm not seeking to turn anyone against them, only to ensure that my perspective is understood. I sent these messages to a select few individuals whose opinion I valued and who had the integrity to evaluate the situation fairly. By late afternoon, flight tracking confirmed that my family was over the Pacific. There was nothing more to do but wait. I turned my attention to my own life, which had been on hold during these intense days of planning and execution. I called my supervisor at work and requested an additional week off. Is everything okay? She asked, concerned about the last-minute request. Family situation, I explained. I need some time to process and reset. Take what you need, she said. Your clients are covered, and you've banked enough overtime to justify a proper break. With my professional obligations addressed, I focused on self-care. I ordered takeout from my favorite restaurant, opened a good bottle of wine, and allowed myself to feel the complex emotions of the past few days. There was pain, certainly, disappointment, a sense of loss for the family relationship I had believed in. But underneath it all was something unexpected: relief. The constant drain of their expectations and demands had been a weight I'd carried for so long that its absence felt almost disorienting. I had spent years structuring my life around their needs, measuring my success by their approval. Now I was free to define my own priorities. The next morning, I checked the flight status. Their plane had landed in Tokyo on schedule. By now, they would have turned on their phones and found my email. They would be discovering that the promised hotel transfer was not waiting, that their reservation at the luxury hotel did not exist. Within hours, my phone began buzzing with increasingly frantic messages. From my mother: there's been a mistake with the hotel. They say we don't have a reservation. Call them immediately to fix this. From my father: something's wrong with the arrangements. Where is the airport pickup you promised? Call me. as soon as possible. From Kevin. What the hell, man? The hotel says we're not in their system. Fix this now. I didn't respond to any of them. They had my email. They knew exactly what had happened and why. Throughout the day, the messages escalated in urgency and tone. We had to book a hotel at the airport at ridiculous rates. What is going on? Your email makes no sense. You can't just cancel everything because your feelings are hurt. Grow up and fix this. Dad is furious. This is absolutely unacceptable behavior. You're ruining his birthday trip. By evening, the reality of their situation was sinking in. The messages shifted from demands to attempts at manipulation. Your father is devastated that you would do this to him. After all he's done for you, we understand you're upset about not coming. But punishing us like this is cruel. Think about what this is doing to Dad's health. His blood pressure can't take this stress. I remained silent, letting them experience the full consequences of their choices without the cushion of my intervention. Social media told another story. Heather's normally prolific posting had gone silent. There were no jubilant photos of Tokyo adventures, no check-ins at exclusive restaurants. The carefully curated narrative of their amazing Japan experience had evaporated in the face of reality. On the third day, Amanda called. "It's a disaster," she said. "They're stranded in Tokyo with limited funds. The credit cards are being declined. They had to move to a hostel because they couldn't afford to stay at the airport hotel. They have their own money," I pointed out. "Dad's retirement savings, Mom's part-time job income, Kevin's whatever he does. You know they've been living beyond their means for years. Without your support, they're basically paycheck to paycheck. That's a problem of their creation, not mine." "Griffin," she said softly, "I understand why you did this. They treated you terribly. But they're in a foreign country with limited resources. Is this really what you want?" I considered her question seriously. Was this what I wanted? Not their suffering, certainly. But the stark reality check? The removal of the false financial security that had enabled their disrespect? Yes, that was exactly what I wanted. "They have return tickets," I said finally. "Those weren't canceled. They can come home whenever they choose. On your terms. On reality's terms, Amanda. I was never obligated to fund their lifestyle or their dreams. That was a choice I made out of love and generosity. They rejected the relationship but expected to keep the benefits. That's not how it works." After we hung up, I received a series of messages from Kevin that revealed another development. Heather left. Said this wasn't what she signed up for. "Thanks for ruining everything." So the girlfriend who was more fun and knew more about Japan had abandoned them when the luxury experience disappeared. I felt no surprise, only confirmation of what I had suspected. Her interest had been in the premium trip, not in my family themselves. By the fifth day, their tone changed dramatically. The initial anger had given way to a dawning comprehension of just how thoroughly their comfortable lives had been intertwined with my support. "We're coming home early," my father texted. "This trip is a disaster without your arrangements. We need to talk when we get back." I didn't respond, but I tracked their return flight. They would arrive tomorrow, exhausted, frustrated, and fundamentally changed by the experience. I felt a strange calm as I prepared for their return. The hurt remained, but it no longer controlled me. I had transformed it into a catalyst for necessary change. Whatever happened next, our relationship would never return to the unhealthy dynamic that had defined it for too long. As I checked the property management app and confirmed that everything was in order at the house, my phone buzzed with a final message from my mother. "We had no idea how much we've depended on you. Coming home to talk. Please." The simplicity of it, the absence of demands or accusations, suggested that perhaps the lesson had begun to take hold. Whether it would last remained to be seen. Their return flight landed at 6:30 in the morning. I tracked it from my apartment, imagining their exhausted state after a truncated, stressful trip, followed by a 14-hour flight in business-class seats that now seemed like a cruel reminder of what could have been. By 9, I received the first message from my father. "We're at the house. The locks are changed. What is going on?" I had prepared for this moment. I replied with the lockbox code that would give them access to the temporary key cards, along with a simple message. Temporary access provided. Review the documents on the kitchen counter for full explanation. I could picture them entering the house, finding the stack of papers, detailing the financial reality of our relationship and the new terms of their tenancy. The property manager had confirmed that she had posted additional copies of the rent adjustment notice, just in case they had missed the one on the door. 3 hours passed with no response. I assumed they were absorbing the information, perhaps attempting to verify my claims about the property ownership and financial contributions. Eventually, my phone rang. It was my father. "We need to talk," he said, his voice strained, face to face. "I agree," I replied. "But not today. You're tired from travel and emotions are running high. Tomorrow would be better. Griffin, you've completely blindsided us with all of this. The house, the money, everything. We had no idea." "That was by design," I said evenly. "You weren't supposed to know. I wanted to support you without making you feel indebted. Unfortunately, that approach led to a fundamental misunderstanding of our relationship. Your mother is devastated. Kevin is talking about moving out immediately. Is that what you wanted? To blow up the family?" "What I wanted was to be treated with basic respect. To be included in the family trip I spent years planning and saving for. To not have my spot given away via text message to someone who's been in your lives for 2 months." Silence on the line. "Then, we made a mistake with that. A terrible mistake. But this response is disproportionate. Is it? Let me ask you something. If I hadn't been funding your lifestyle all these years, would you have treated me the same way? Would you have so casually dismissed my feelings and contribution?" More silence. "Finally, we need to fix this. As a family." "Yes, we do. But not on the old terms. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, at the coffee shop on Maple. We can talk then." After hanging up, I received a series of texts from Kevin, alternating between anger and desperation. "You've ruined everything. Heather broke up with me because of this disaster. I can't afford market rent on this place. Where am I supposed to go? Dad says you own the house? Have you been playing landlord this whole time? Laughing at us behind our backs?" I didn't respond to any of his messages. Kevin had been the architect of much of this situation, consistently taking advantage of both my parents and me. His problems were his to solve. Amanda called next. "I'm staying out of this," she said. "But they're in shock, Griffin. Mom keeps saying she had no idea how much you were supporting them. Dad looks like he's aged 10 years since they got home. And Kevin?" Alternating between rage and panic. "Heather apparently met someone else in Japan after she ditched them. Some Australian backpacker. Now he's facing real rent for the first time." "Are you okay?" I asked, genuinely concerned about how this was affecting her. "I'm fine. I've always paid my own way. But I'm worried about them. Especially Dad. He's taking this hard. Griffin." "It's been a difficult realization for everyone," I acknowledged. "But necessary. Just be gentle tomorrow. They're starting to understand what they've done." The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop early, selecting a quiet corner table that would allow for a private conversation. I watched through the window as my parents approached, looking tired and subdued. Kevin wasn't with them. My mother's eyes were red from crying. My father's shoulders slumped in a way I hadn't seen before. They spotted me and navigated to the table, sitting down without the usual greetings or small talk. "Kevin decided not to join us," my father said. "He's struggling with all of this." "I imagine so," I replied. "Shall we order first?" After the server brought our drinks, an awkward silence descended. Finally, my mother spoke. "We had no idea, Griffin, about any of it. The house, the extent of your financial support. How could we not know?" "Because I deliberately kept it that way," I explained. "I didn't want you to feel indebted or uncomfortable. I just wanted to help." "But why?" my father asked. "Why go to such lengths in secret?" I considered his question carefully. "Because I love you. Because you sacrificed for me growing up. And I wanted to give back. Because I thought that's what family does." "Then I don't understand this." He gestured vaguely, encompassing all that had happened. "If that's how you felt, why the extreme reaction to the trip situation?" "Because it revealed the truth about how you see me," I said quietly. "When you gave away my spot on that trip, You weren't just excluding me from an experience. You were making a statement about my value to the family. That I matter as a financial resource but not as a person. That my presence is less desirable than someone you've known for 2 months. My mother began to cry softly. We didn't think of it that way. It seemed like a simple change to make the trip more enjoyable. More enjoyable because I wouldn't be there, I pointed out. I saw the comments you all made about the itinerary. How boring I am. How pedantic. How you were relieved to not have me analyzing everything to death. My father flinched. Those comments were thoughtless. We were excited about Heather joining and got carried away. They were honest, I countered. More honest than you've been to my face in years. And that's the problem. You've been treating me one way while thinking about me in another. So this is punishment, my father said, a hint of his earlier anger returning. No, this is reality. I've been subsidizing your lives while being treated as an afterthought. That arrangement no longer works for me. Moving forward, our relationship needs to be based on genuine respect and appreciation, not financial dependence. And if we can't afford the new rent, if we can't manage without your help, my mother asked, then you make different choices. You downsize. You budget. You do what most adults do when facing financial constraints. I'm not saying I'll never help again, but it won't be unlimited or unconditional. We talked for nearly 2 hours, working through years of unspoken tensions and misunderstandings. Gradually, the conversation shifted from recrimination to reconciliation. They began to acknowledge the depth of their mistake and the pattern of behavior that had led to it. We've taken you for granted, my father admitted finally. For years. I see that now. And we've enabled Kevin's worst tendencies, my mother added. He's never had to face consequences because between you and us, we've always cushioned him. As we prepared to leave, my father asked the question that had been hovering unspoken throughout our conversation. Where do we go from here, Griffin? What does family mean to us now? I thought carefully before answering. It means honesty, respect, appreciation. It means recognizing each other's value beyond what we can provide materially. It means rebuilding trust that's been broken. That sounds like a lot of work, he said quietly. It is, I agreed. But I think we're worth it. Don't you? For the first time that day, I saw a glimmer of my old father in his eyes. Yes, he said firmly. We are. As we parted, my mother hugged me tightly. I'm so sorry, Griffin. For everything. We'll make this right. I know, I replied, surprising myself with how much I believed it. Walking back to my car, I felt a weight lifting. The conversation had been difficult but necessary. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but at least it would be honest. That evening, I received a text from my father that simply read, "Thank you for not giving up on us entirely. We don't deserve your forgiveness, but we're grateful for the chance to earn it." And from my mother, "We're looking at apartments within our actual budget. It's humbling but necessary." Kevin remained silent, but Amanda reported that he was finally applying for steady jobs and facing the reality of his situation. The most unexpected development came 3 days later when my father suffered chest pains while packing for their move. Amanda called me in panic from the emergency room. "They think it might be his heart," she said, voice shaking. "Mom's falling apart. Can you come?" I drove to the hospital immediately, anxiety gnawing at my insides. Had the stress of everything pushed him into a health crisis? Was this ultimately my fault? I found my mother in the waiting room, looking small and afraid. When she saw me, she collapsed into my arms. "The doctor says it might be stress-related," she whispered. All of this, the trip disaster, finding out about the house, it was too much for him. I held her, my own guilt and concern mounting. "He's strong," I assured her. "He'll get through this." Hours later, the doctor provided a diagnosis. Not a heart attack, but severe anxiety manifesting with physical symptoms. They wanted to keep him overnight for observation and recommended follow-up with a cardiologist. But the immediate danger had passed. When I was finally allowed to see him, my father looked diminished in the hospital bed, monitors beeping softly beside him. "I thought I was having a heart attack," he admitted. "All I could think was that we'd part with things unresolved between us." "Things are resolving," I said, taking his hand. "Not perfectly, not instantly, but they're moving in the right direction." "I keep thinking about that trip," he said. "How much work you put into planning it. How thoughtless we were." I was. I let Kevin influence me into making a terrible decision. "It wasn't just about the trip," I reminded him gently. "I know. It was everything. Years of taking you for granted." He squeezed my hand. "When I get out of here, I want to start fresh. No secrets, no expectations. Just rebuilding what we've damaged." That night marked a turning point. My father's health scare had crystallized for all of us the true stakes of our family conflict. It wasn't about money or property or even respect in the abstract. It was about the real human connections that could be irreparably harmed by continued dysfunction. In the days that followed, I helped my parents find an affordable apartment and assisted with their move. Kevin found a roommate situation across town and, remarkably, secured a steady job at an insurance office. Amanda, who had always maintained healthier boundaries, supported everyone emotionally while continuing her nursing studies. The transition wasn't smooth. There were moments of backsliding, of old patterns reasserting themselves. My mother occasionally made comments that suggested she expected financial assistance to resume. Kevin sometimes tried to deflect responsibility for his part in what had happened. But underneath it all, a fundamental shift had occurred. The illusions had been stripped away, forcing everyone to see our family dynamic clearly for perhaps the first time. That clarity, painful as it was, created the possibility for genuine healing. 6 weeks after their return from the abbreviated Japan trip, my father called with an unexpected proposal. "I've been thinking," he said, "about Japan, about everything. I'd like to try again, but differently this time. Just you and me. A father and son trip. Not right away. Maybe next year when we've saved enough. What do you think?" The offer touched me deeply. Not because of the trip itself, but because it represented his understanding of what had been lost and his genuine desire to rebuild our connection. "I'd like that," I replied. "Very much." 6 months passed, bringing changes none of us could have anticipated. My parents settled into their apartment, adjusting to a lifestyle aligned with their actual resources. My father, motivated partly by his health scare, took early retirement from the manufacturing plant and found part-time work at a local hardware store, something he genuinely enjoyed. My mother increased her hours at the community library and discovered a talent for organizing children's reading programs. Kevin's transformation was perhaps the most surprising. The sudden withdrawal of financial support forced him to confront reality in ways he'd avoided for years. After a few weeks of resentment and blame, he committed to his insurance job, discovering unexpected aptitude for the work. His relationship with Heather was over, but the experience had prompted valuable self-reflection. "I treated relationships like transactions," he admitted during one of our infrequent but increasingly honest conversations. "Not just with Heather, but with everyone, including you." Amanda flourished in her nursing program, her natural empathy enhanced by the family crisis she'd witnessed and helped navigate. She often served as the bridge when communications between other family members became strained. As for me, the experience had been transformative in unexpected ways. Setting boundaries had created space to examine my own patterns. Why had I enabled their dependency for so long? Why had I derived such satisfaction from being the family provider? These questions led to productive sessions with a therapist who helped me understand that my generosity had sometimes been a substitute for true intimacy. 4 months after the Japan fiasco, I invited my parents to dinner at my apartment. The atmosphere was different from our family gatherings of the past, more thoughtful, less performative. We discussed real issues, acknowledged difficulties, celebrated genuine accomplishments. "We've been working with a financial counselor," my mother shared, "learning to budget properly for the first time in our adult lives. It's humbling," my father added, "realizing how financially illiterate we've been all these years, but also liberating. We know where we stand now." "That's impressive," I said, genuinely proud of their efforts. "How's it going?" "We had to make hard choices," my mother admitted. "No more impulse purchases, careful meal planning, thrift shops instead of department stores. But we're managing without debt for the first time in decades." My father looked at me directly. "We owe you an apology, Griffin. Not just for the trip, but for years of taking advantage of your generosity without appreciation." "I enabled it," I acknowledged. I wanted to help, but I did it in ways that created dependency rather than empowerment. Still, he insisted, we should have recognized what was happening and had the integrity to stop it. This simple acknowledgement, delivered without excuses or qualifications, helped heal something deep within me. The validation that I hadn't been wrong about what happened, that my feelings were justified, allowed me to move toward genuine forgiveness. As we cleared the dinner dishes together, my mother asked tentatively, would it be possible? I know things are different now, but would you consider joining us for the holidays this year? A fresh start? I'd like that, I replied. Very much. The following month brought another significant development. My father called to discuss the house I still owned, and they had vacated. I've been thinking about your investment there, he said. It's not right that it's sitting empty while you continue paying the mortgage and maintenance. I've been considering putting it on the market, I explained. The rental income would be helpful, but I'm not sure I want the complications of being a landlord. What if we helped? He suggested. Not moving back in, but helping prepare it for sale or rental. Kevin and I could handle repairs and upgrades. It would be a way to begin repaying some of what we owe you. His offer represented exactly the kind of balanced relationship I had hoped might eventually develop, one where giving and receiving flowed naturally in both directions. We agreed to meet that weekend to assess the property's needs. Working alongside my father and brother to repair and improve the house created opportunities for connection that had been missing from our relationship for years. As we painted walls and replaced fixtures, conversations unfolded naturally, touching on subjects we'd previously avoided. I've always been jealous of you, Kevin admitted one afternoon as we installed new kitchen cabinets. Your success, your self-discipline, Dad's pride in you. It was easier to resent you than try to match your efforts. And I probably flaunted my achievements sometimes, I acknowledged, using them to feel superior when I should have been more supportive of your journey. These honest exchanges, uncomfortable but necessary, laid the groundwork for healthier relationships moving forward. By the time the house was ready for market, 5 weeks later, something had shifted in our family dynamic. The resentments hadn't disappeared entirely, but they had been acknowledged and addressed. The expectations had been recalibrated to something more reasonable and reciprocal. When the house sold, at a price considerably higher than my initial investment, I made a decision that surprised even me. After recouping my costs and a fair return, I divided a portion of the profits among family members, with clear communication that this was not a return to old patterns but a one-time sharing of unexpected gains. This isn't an obligation or an expectation, I explained as I presented them with the checks. It's a choice I'm making from a place of abundance rather than obligation. Their reactions told me everything I needed to know about how far we'd come. Rather than immediately accepting, they each paused to consider what this meant. Are you sure? My father asked. After everything? I'm sure, I confirmed. This feels right. My mother suggested using part of her share to begin a modest savings fund for a future family trip, one that includes everyone, with expenses shared appropriately. Kevin proposed investing his portion rather than spending it, a concept that would have been unimaginable 6 months earlier. As autumn turned to winter, my father reminded me of his suggestion about a father-son trip to Japan. I've been saving, he said proudly. Not enough for anything fancy, but maybe next spring we could do a simpler version of what you planned? I'd like that, I said, but let's plan it together this time. Equal input, equal investment. We began researching options that aligned with our actual budget and shared interests, creating an itinerary that belonged to both of us, rather than being my gift to him. The process itself became valuable, our weekly planning sessions evolving into opportunities for deeper connection. During one such session, as we debated the merits of different Kyoto accommodations, my father grew unexpectedly serious. I need you to know something, Griffin. What happened with that original trip, giving your spot to Heather, it's the biggest regret of my life. Not just because of the consequences, but because I betrayed you when you had done nothing but support us. Why did you agree to it? I asked. The question that had haunted me for months. He considered carefully before answering. Weakness, primarily. Kevin presented it as this exciting upgrade to the experience. Heather was new and different, full of stories about exclusive places and authentic experiences. The way they talked about it made your carefully planned itinerary sound pedestrian in comparison. He looked down, shame evident in his expression. And I think, subconsciously, I was looking for ways to feel less indebted to you. Having Heather guide us instead somehow seemed to diminish the magnitude of your gift, making it easier to accept. His honesty, painful as it was to hear, provided the closure I had needed. "Thank you for telling me the truth," I said. "It matters." In December, our family gathered for Christmas at Amanda's small apartment. The atmosphere was markedly different from previous years. No lavish gifts, no unrealistic expectations. Just simple presents thoughtfully chosen. My mother had prepared traditional dishes. My father brought homemade eggnog. And Kevin arrived with a surprisingly sophisticated cheese board from his new specialty food store job. As we sat together in Amanda's modest living room, my father raised his glass in a toast. "To lessons learned," he said, "to boundaries respected, and to a family that's finding its way back to what really matters." We clinked glasses, the sound a perfect crystallization of our journey thus far. Imperfect but genuine. A work in progress rather than a finished product. Later, as we helped clean up after dinner, Amanda pulled me aside. "You know what I realized?" she said. "This is the first family gathering I can remember where there's no underlying tension, no walking on eggshells. Everyone is just present." She was right. The dynamic had fundamentally changed. Without the distortions of financial dependence and unspoken expectations, we were finally seeing each other clearly, accepting both the strengths and limitations that made us who we were. As winter melted into spring, my father and I finalized plans for our Japan trip. We would visit only Tokyo and Kyoto, staying in modest accommodations, traveling by public transportation, experiencing the country as ordinary tourists rather than VIPs. The itinerary reflected both our interests, balancing historical sites with contemporary culture, structured activities with time for spontaneous exploration. 2 weeks before our departure, we gathered for a family dinner to celebrate Amanda's graduation from her nursing program. During the meal, my father made an announcement that caught everyone by surprise. "Griffin and I leave for Japan soon," he said, "and it's got me thinking about how much has changed since last year. I want to thank all of you for the difficult work we've done as a family. It would have been easier to let resentments fester, to retreat into blame and justification. Instead, we faced some hard truths about ourselves and our relationships." He turned to me. "Especially you, Griffin. You had every right to walk away completely after how we treated you. Instead, you forced us to confront reality, then gave us the chance to rebuild something better. I'm more proud to be your father today than I've ever been." The emotion in his voice touched something deep within me. For years, I had sought his approval through achievement and financial support. Now, paradoxically, I had earned his deepest respect by establishing boundaries and demanding accountability. My mother added her own thoughts. "This year has been humbling and difficult, but also clarifying. We lost the comfort of financial security, but gained something more valuable: genuine relationships based on mutual respect rather than dependency." Kevin, who had remained somewhat on the periphery of our family healing, spoke up. "I've been the slowest to come around," he admitted. "Partly because I was the most invested in the old dynamic. It benefited me the most." He looked at me directly. "I'm still working on myself, still learning to take responsibility. But I want you to know I see what you did for us now, and why the changes were necessary." Amanda, ever the family mediator, raised her glass. "To growth," she said simply. "Sometimes painful, always necessary." As we clinked glasses again, I felt a sense of completion. Not perfect resolution, not fairy tale forgiveness, but something real and sustainable. A family recalibrated, relationships rebalanced. The night before my father and I departed for our scaled-down but meaningful Japan adventure, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The betrayal had been real and painful. The response had been drastic but necessary. The healing had been gradual and imperfect. Yet somehow, from that painful rupture had emerged relationships with greater authenticity and balance than we had ever achieved before. We had replaced hollow harmony with honest engagement, superficial connection with genuine understanding. As my father and I boarded our economy flight to Tokyo the next morning, sharing travel snacks and guidebooks, I realized that this modest journey together held more meaning than the luxury experience I had originally planned could ever have achieved. It represented not just a trip but a milestone in our evolving relationship, one based not on financial support or obligation, but on genuine connection and mutual respect. The true lesson wasn't about punishment or consequences. It was about the courage to disrupt unhealthy patterns, the patience to allow genuine change, and the wisdom to build relationships that honor everyone's dignity and autonomy. Sometimes, the most loving act is not endless giving, but establishing the boundaries that allow authentic connections to flourish. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family or friends who took your generosity for granted? How did you balance self-respect with compassion? Please share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I wish you the courage to create healthy relationships in your own life.